all know that those of us on the west side, historically, we don't always have our voices heard and our perspective listened to. And I think events like this really help us connect with the people seeking to represent us and help them hear from us. So it's important that you're here, and I really appreciate it. A bit about our organization. The Westside Coalition represents all 6 Westside neighborhoods. We have the community council chairs of each neighborhood on our board, as well as other at-large members and appointees. And we represent and advocate for the health, safety, and quality of life of the West Side. So if you have issues you want us to be aware of, please bring them to us. westsideslc.org. We're co-hosting tonight with the League of Women Voters. The League is a nonpartisan, grassroots organization that works to ensure citizens are engaged in their government through advocacy, education, litigation at the local, state, and national levels. It is one of the League's traditions and what we want to honor tonight to open the event with a land acknowledgement. I've asked Carl Warren to give that today. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. Good evening, relatives. It's good to be here. It's good to see everybody. My name is Carl Moore. I'm a local Indigenous activist, currently working on the issue of our unsheltered relatives in Salt Lake City. So, part of the Second Coalition, Unsheltered Utah. So I just want to say that so that because we always going to need help with people on the streets, protecting their rights to live in safety. I want to acknowledge, first of all, the creator, who has made us, who has created the trees that we see outside, has created all the food that we eat that has been grown by maybe some of y'all's hands. And acknowledge the animals that we eat, again, maybe grown by some of y'all's hands. I want to acknowledge the air that we have, the water that we have, and the sun that we have. Also want to acknowledge that this is stolen land that we reside here in so-called Salt Lake City. This is historical land of the Goshu, Shoshone, Ute, Paiute, the Dene people. And I just want to remind us all that when it comes to any kind of politics, the Indigenous voice is the voice that should be heard over anybody else's voice, and that's just because this is Indigenous land. So, thank you. Goodbye.
All right, thank you, Carl. I was told by the sound engineers it's a little echoey here, so we appreciate you all trying to keep it down so we can all hear the event tonight. Just a couple more things from me. I really want to thank our sponsors that helped make this event possible. These include the Utah State Fair Park, which donated this building and all of our audio equipment, podium, stage. Just thank you very much. The Fair Park is a really valued member of the Westside community, and I think this is maybe the 20th event that some community or brother I've had here, and they always do such a phenomenal job. So thank you to the Fair Park. Thank you to Santo Taco, which also donated completely all the burritos that we enjoyed tonight. Thank you, Santo Taco, another great community partner. The Dana Foundation, which is the largest donor to the Westside Coalition and has really made our last year of activities and events possible, and then some. So thank you, Dana Foundation. The U.S. Translation Company, as you heard a minute ago, we have live Spanish translation tonight. They're set up over here, so you can come grab a headset if you speak Spanish. And hopefully you heard the announcement in Spanish a moment ago. Español aquí. This is the first time we've ever done this. We're very excited about it. We really hope to do it more in the future. Please let your Spanish-speaking neighbors and friends know that it is a service we want to provide. DB Productions, Daniel Tutow, one of our board members, is handling our live streaming on Facebook. Some of us are probably joining there now. These events like this are typically streamed on Facebook and on our website, westsideslc.org. Thank you. And we also have live ASL translation right here, provided by the Sego Lilly Center for Abused and Deaf. So thank you all to all of our sponsors. Last thing I want to do is introduce our moderator for tonight's forum, so you'll stop hearing from me and hear from a professional. Before I do that, I do want to acknowledge, we
More better, guys. That's have a better government by standing on the Constitution, because it was made for all people. We are all equal to each other, and we do not need to fight with each other to try to control the people. And that's what the two parties are doing. They've turned us into their sheep, and they are trying to devour us. And we need to stand up as a people and make them stop. I do believe that everyone needs to be an informed voter. So even if you don't vote for me, which I hope you will, look at all the candidates. See who stands for what you stand for. And that's who you should vote for. Because don't vote just for a party, because they say that if you don't vote for them, the opposition will win. Because it's not true. The people have the final say, and I think it's time for us to stand up and say it. So you guys all have a great evening. Come and talk to me at a table back there, and thank you so much for coming.
By show of hands, pardon me, by show of hands, how many of you know somebody that is currently worried about housing and inflation? How many of you know somebody that is struggling to pay their bills? How many of you know somebody that is having to make a decision between whether they pay rent or whether they get food? My platform is 100% focused on housing and inflation. That is all I care about at the end of the day. My background is in business, economics, and finance, and I've pulled specific policies that we can do and that we can change to make it so that the flow of money isn't continuing to go upward, but it actually returns to the circle that it used to be at one point. 64% of Americans are facing similar situations to what you have today, and most people are one paycheck away from homelessness. When we look at the political divide that we've been experiencing, a lot of it is caused by the amount of money that's in the economy, because you see people just trying to grasp at solutions like, let's go over to this side and let's go over to this side. But polarization is not needed, because policy can stand on its own 2 feet. Policy can be proven. So thank you so much for your time coming out here. I hope that you'll visit me. If you would like to follow me on social media, my handles are Utah Politician. My website is Utah Politician. And please vote for Gardner Walker, because real solutions shouldn't be seasonal.
Okay, everybody, we would like to invite the mayoral candidates to please come up and take their seats here where their names are. And while they do that, I am going to read some of the ground rules here. It is the goal of the Westside Coalition and the League of Women Voters to conduct candidate forums with civility and respect and maintain a nonpartisan atmosphere that allows each candidate to speak without interruption and the audience to fully hear each candidate's response. So we ask you to comply with certain audience rules. With this in mind, we've shared with all candidates and posted ground rules for our politics involved, the sponsoring organizations, the candidates, and the audience. Please come up and take your seats. So please refrain from cheering, jeering, or applause following a candidate's response. Rather, we would ask that you hold off and give general applause at the end of the forum. Do not engage in conversations or other disruptions during this discussion. Do not hold up or display campaign materials, including campaign buttons, hats, literature, banners, or signs. Please silence your cell phones. If at any time an audience member or candidate does become disruptive, the panel discussion will be paused until the disruption ceases. If this continues, the panel discussion may be stopped entirely. Those that are participating virtually by live stream are also asked to remain on mute during the discussion, and should you have any technical issues, the organizers say advise them via chat. The question and design, so that you're all aware, initial input on topics and questions were submitted from Salt Lake City constituents through an online submissions process, as well as members of the Westside Coalition and the League. Guidelines were provided at the time of the submission. Questions were not to include or imply personal attacks on any candidate.
recommended action to a candidate, editorializing, or be argumentative using inappropriate language or disparaging remarks. If time permits, we will ask constituent-submitted questions offered during the forum, and I have a stack here that have been screened and curated. Selection of and modifications to the questions will be made at the discretion of the team to eliminate redundancy and ensure adherence to question guidelines. Now, the candidates did draw in order for their opening statement and responses, and then we're going to rotate through the order. The time allotted for the response will be announced at the start of each question. Timekeepers, candidates, will be that red sign, as well as these people right here who will be able to tell you how much longer you have, and then I get to enforce and cut you off there at that point when the time limits end. So let's go ahead and get started, and we do have our initial opening statements will go in this order. Rocky Anderson, Michael Valentine, and Erin Mendenhall. You each get 2 minutes for an opening statement, so we will start with you, Rocky Anderson.
Thank you, Matt. Hello? Residents, businesses, and members of our homeless community have been betrayed by several years of indifference and efforts by our current mayor to escape her responsibility. In many areas of our city, residents and businesses have homeless encampments in their neighborhoods and in our parks. They have human feces and urine on their properties without any public restrooms provided by the city. And they have witnessed obvious, conspicuous dealing and use of dangerous drugs without any enforcement or deterrence by our city. As a result, we've lost businesses, longtime great businesses like Latter-day Brides, like Southam Galleries, who said it's because of the leadership in our city that's not resolving these problems. So we have no shelter today. I looked online, the city's website, no shelter for any of the unsheltered members of our community. And that's because of a lack of attention and decent planning. And that happened during last winter. We have a record now that is so abysmal in terms of treatment of the homeless. Last winter, there were so many people who died, who lost their limbs. Some of them are here today who lost their toes, their fingers, because our mayor did not provide for decent shelter for those left out in the cold. We have a choice. We're all in this together. If you want to see major change, you can make it happen. Thank you very much.
Michael Valentine, you have 2 minutes.
Thanks so much. So I am Michael Valentine. I'd like to thank Ben and the Westside Coalition and the League of Women Voters for throwing this event on. I'm a bit different than the other two candidates up here. I'm the only candidate that hasn't been the mayor before. Kind of representing a new voice. I'm a millennial, I'm an independent. I don't really believe in political parties. I'm running to unite people together to solve solutions and actually, work for the people and not real estate developers or corporations. I'm also the only candidate that hasn't taken any money from corporations and real estate developers. I've personally been homeless before. I think homelessness is the #1 issue in the state and especially the city right now. It's very concerning to me. I'd also put that along with the saving the Great Salt Lake is my other big concern. But I'm actually running to eradicate homelessness. I released a housing homeless plan in February of this year. It declares a state of emergency, sets up sanctioned camping for everybody, not just for 50 people. It intakes everybody, moves everybody into housing, and it specifically bans abatements, which I think are immoral and unjust and crimes against humanity. I think it's something we need to do right now. And then on top of that as well, I'm an anti-corruption candidate. A lot of people know me as the Pantages guy. I'm kind of known around the world even for that. That's kind of what started my journey in here. I'm a filmmaker. I just wanted to save this historic theater. I never really wanted to run for office. I'm actually running because people in the community asked me to run as the director of the nonprofit fighting to save the theater. I mentioned homelessness, I mentioned the Great Salt Lake, but I really think corruption is the #1 issue. And we all need a city government. We need a government on every level that works for us, that is accountable, that's transparent to the people, that serves the people of the community and fulfills the oath of office and not, corporations. So thanks so much.
Erin Mendenhall, 2 minutes.
Thanks. I'm Erin Mendenhall. I'm a mom. I'm an air quality advocate. I'm the mayor of Salt Lake City. And I am not from the West Side, but I am for the West Side. And the endorsements that I've earned from council members Petro and Poi were not easy to come by. The endorsements I've earned from Representatives Sandra Hollins and Angela Romero were not easy to come by. And the personal endorsements that I've earned from the chairs of Poplar Grove, Rose Park, Glendale Community Councils, I worked for those. The endorsement of our former Poplar Grove Council Chair, Esther Jackson Stoll, who's here tonight, she's warned me that she's worried about my East Side electability because I've delivered so hard for the West Side. And the West Side has gotten a raw deal since it was the West Side. We cannot undo decades of disinvestment and inequity in just 4 years, but we have made some huge steps forward. We're building the first regional park in our city in over 60 years, and we're putting it on the west side at Glendale Regional Park. We've built bus routes that punch through the west-east divide, and we've improved hundreds of bus stops. We've put 25,000 free bus passes into the hands of every single public school kid in our school district, their parent, and their teachers. And we invented the Via Rideshare program on the west side with UTA. After they piloted it in another community, we brought it here, and we've doubled the investment there to make it easier for Westsiders to connect with public transit. Crime is down citywide. It's down 15% citywide. On the west side, it's down 29%. Salt Lake City police and firefighters endorse me because they know that my administration is going to do the best job of making the city safer for everyone. Our city is not perfect, but it is pretty great, and I will not let anybody take us backwards. Thank you for having me tonight.
Thank you, candidates. Let's go ahead and get started with some questions. The first subject we're going to talk about is housing development and infrastructure. Per 2022 projections from the Kem C. Gardner Policy Institute, Salt Lake County's population is projected to grow from 1.2 to 1.7 million residents by 2060. So, do you believe that population growth in Salt Lake City is inevitable? If not, why not? And what's your plan to reasonably accommodate growth? You get 2 minutes to respond, and we're going to start with Michael Valentine.
Yes, so obviously the city's growing. I think that's, I think it is inevitable. I think what's important is that we don't lose our city's character and our soul while that happens. I mentioned this historic theater. So it needs to be a balance of preserving what makes Utah and Salt Lake City great and not just losing everything that we have along the way and becoming another soulless city like anything else. So, building with that in mind is having a balance of historic preservation, but also making sure the housing works for the community, that we're building for locals, that locals aren't getting displaced right now. We saw a huge intake of people coming from California during the pandemic, and locals getting displaced, people working for like Goldman Sachs and tech workers and stuff. And that's all well and good, but locals can't be displaced downtown as well, and that's an issue that's not really talked about a lot. We talk about homelessness and housing, but I live in a $2,000 apartment right by the gateway that's actually an RDA property. That's not affordable. No one can afford $2,000. That's ridiculous for a 2-bedroom apartment that was paid for with city dollars. So it's important that locals are here. I think, building actual, truly affordable housing, I think there's a huge disconnect when the city talks about affordable housing and you ask regular people what affordable housing means. 1 bedroom for $500, a 2-bedroom for $750. That's real affordable housing. Are we building that in Salt Lake City right now? We're not. So we can grow, we can keep growing and build a city of our dreams, as I like to say, but let's not forget who we are. Let's not displace locals. Let's not lose our historic nature, our character. Let's not defund the arts for luxury apartments. Let's keep building the city that everyone's happy to live for, and people can come make a better life here, and we can have one of the greatest cities in America.
Thank you. Erin Mendenhall, 2 minutes.
There's no denying that growth has been happening here for a long time. Since 2010 to 2020, we're the fastest growing state in the nation, 18.4% growth. That's continued in the last few years, and Salt Lake has seen a lot of that growth happening. Now, facing the alternative of decline, a mayor should take the challenge of growth any day, because that means new revenue, more culture and diversity, and more opportunities, but it's how we grow that matters. That's part of why I ran for mayor. All my experience on the city council showed me the legislative side, the land use policy side, and I knew if I got in there, we were going to go hard on fighting the gentrification that's happening because of the market forces on our communities. And you helped us build Thriving in Place, our 22-point strategy that you informed. Thank you very much, City Council, for supporting that, and they're about to vote on it in the next couple of weeks. Things like a full-time tenant advocate. So if you are facing eviction or you can't afford your rent, there's somebody at City Hall full-time, has never been there before, to help you navigate how to stay in your housing. Or if you have to move, what kind of financial resources we can connect you with. This 22-point plan is just one of the ways we're managing growth. The other one, since 2018, when I chaired the City Council, we asked you, what do you want us to invest in if we get the prison and we get an increase in sales tax opportunity? One of the things you said, more affordable housing. But it wasn't until 2020 when our investment in affordable housing went up 413%. $55 million in the last 3.5 years. It's created 4,000 affordable units in the city, according to the federal HUD standards, and 777 permanently supportive housing units that were partnered in investment with the state of Utah. The state of Utah has never supported affordable housing the way that they finally are now, and it's leveraging our investments even further. We have to keep that partnership going.
Thank you. Rocky Anderson, 2 minutes.
The mayor has claimed during this campaign that she has achieved 777 units of supportive permanent housing. That is absolutely false. And any of you that go up North Temple to Redwood Road, just look at the old Ramada Inn. It is sitting there dilapidated, no work going on. She promised us when she took $2 million of our infrastructure money that would be built and housing unsheltered people in this community as soon as the overflow shelters were closed last April. Nothing has been done. There's not one unit open. And the other unit, the other project that she took another $2 million of our infrastructure money for, is a medically vulnerable facility that's going to be in Sandy. And there's not one unit there built either. So this is all, you take those hundreds of units that were promised us by last April, and that's how many people are on the streets today because of the neglect and incompetence and the absolute delays of this administration. It's like, it reminds one of what happened in April of 2021. And we were told, oh, we're working at light speed. There are going to be homes that are ready to be occupied at the other side village by this winter. That was the winter of 2021. We've gone through 2 vicious winters, people dying, people losing limbs, fingers, toes, because of the neglect of this administration. Now we are growing. We need to do more on affordable housing. And instead of stuffing the pockets of for-profit developers, I would have the city do what Barcelona, what Vienna, what Singapore does with high ownership rates. People who are, 60% of people in Vienna live in their social housing. We build it, and we can keep the rates down and take it out of the market so rents aren't going to keep increasing at these ridiculous market rates that are driven by the developers that have been financed with millions of our dollars by this administration.
Let's continue with housing. I would like the audience to please avoid disruptions. Thank you. We're going to continue with housing. What initiatives or policies have or would you introduce in order to create home ownership opportunities for mid to low income families in our communities? 90 seconds for a response, and we are going to start with Erin Mendenhall.
First of all, the city doesn't build affordable housing because we're the fastest growing state in the nation, and so private investors are building housing, and instead of us covering the entire cost of one building, which is about what we'd get out of what we've gotten 4,000 units out of, we're leaning into the fact that investment is happening, housing creation is happening, and so we get to invest less and get more. What the former mayor is talking about in Vienna and other parts of Europe, they've been investing every single year in that since World War II. But when we do it in America, it's the South Bronx. What he's talking about is the projects. We are not going to do that. Mixed income housing is the best way for us to leverage people into success, into environments of thriving. First, back to your question though. Which
What initiatives or policies have or would you introduce to create
$10 million.
homeownership opportunities
We're
for
taking
mid
the
to
last
low-income
of our
families?
we're taking the last of our rescue plan dollars, the $10 million what the council recently approved, and we're creating the state's very first perpetual housing fund, which is wealth building housing, 1,500 new affordable units, and it's our intention that the majority are family-sized units. Of those 1,500, 500 will be for ownership, and you'll be able to enter into ownership with an equity partner through this perpetual housing fund. And for the 1,000 that will be for rent, instead of some investors pocketing the revenue off of that building every year, you get a subsidy check as a renter.
All right, Rocky Anderson, we'll go with you, 90 seconds, please.
Well, what you all just heard betrays an amazing misunderstanding about non-market or social housing by the mayor who's been in public office here now for almost 10 years. For her to say that these are like the federal projects where they put all poor people and ignored it and put in with bad infrastructure. No, what you do is you build beautiful, architecturally superior places like is being done around the rest of the world. And by the way, the voters in Seattle just passed a voters initiative demanding that there be social housing, that the city invest in great housing and you take it out of the market so that it's not driven up by these developers, the very ones that the city has been paying millions of dollars to. We've got to change that paradigm, and we've got to, as a city government, recognize that affordable housing is a public need, and we're going to be involved in it and not leave it to those in the market who end up making these rapacious profits from the misery of so many people that can't afford affordable housing, what they call affordable housing in our community. Do not let the markets run over those who can't afford housing in our community, and hold politicians accountable when they start throwing around the term affordable. Ask them how much that is and affordable at what level of income.
Michael Valentine, 90 seconds. Please, again, audience, I would ask you to hold your applause or cheering or any disruptions.
So yeah, I don't know if Mayor Mendenhall knows this, but they have rent control, they have inclusionary zoning, they have actual affordable housing in other parts of America. Rent control has been in New York for decades. So what's going on right now in Salt Lake City is that the redevelopment agency is not building housing for actual community members. They're using it as a dollar store to inflate housing costs up by subsidizing luxury housing. The Pantages still that they destroyed for apartments are luxury housing apartments. There's a reason the city never talks about what these apartments actually rent for, because they know there's a disconnect and people will know that's, you know, I almost swore there, but they know it's fake. They know that a $1,500 apartment is not affordable. I just mentioned I live in an RDA apartment. It's $2,000. How is that affordable for a 2-bedroom? Back to the other question. In terms of ownership, so I actually have a real estate license. I'm a licensed real estate agent. I'm also a millennial. The average age of Salt Lake, we're one of the youngest cities in the country, is 32. I'm 35. If I elected, I'll be the 3rd youngest mayor in city history. I actually represent the average people. As a millennial, we're the first generation to go backwards where we can't have housing ownership. It just doesn't exist. There's luxury apartments, there's $1 million homes, there's nothing in between. So we need real housing ownership. We need people to actually build equity and long-term wealth and not just give money to real estate developers.
Thank you. Let's continue on with development. The question is, as our city has grown, it feels like larger scale industrial development, airport, railroads, freeways, power plants, etc., have all been centered on the west side. With the inland port and freeway expansion coming, the trend continues. As the area further industrializes, the area's future viability as a place for families to live and work is in question. So what's your plan to address it? You get 90 seconds to respond, and we're going to start with Rocky Anderson.
All right. Don't accept the idea that the expansion of the I-15 is a given. The mayor does. She says, well, since legislature wants it, I want a seat at the table. That's the same thing she said when she bowed down to them on the inland port. Seat at the table, let's make it a better deal. You know what happened when they proposed the Legacy Highway? The legislature's behind it, the governor, they had it all planned. It was illegal, and I took it on along with the Sierra Club and another organization. We brought a lawsuit, and they won the lawsuit, and we stopped that illegal program, which was going to be environmentally very damaging, especially for the west side. We stood up and provided that leadership. Now, do you just want go along, get along leadership in Salt Lake City? Or do you want somebody, yeah, you might make people irritated for a while, but you stand up and you fight the fights and you end up bringing along progress like we did with not the Legacy Highway, but the Legacy Parkway, a far better environmental project than initially planned. Now, the Great Salt Lake, you talk about damage to the west side. We all need to stand together. We have 5 years. What is the greatest water user in our state? 68% or more of the available water, it's alfalfa farming. And that really kind of sucks for the governor since he's an alfalfa farmer, but we need to all demand an end to alfalfa farming and restore the Great Salt Lake for the benefit of everybody.
Time. Michael Valentine, you're up next.
I'm ready.
I know we both have long hair, but we're actually different people. So this is a great question. We got to kind of go back in time here and talk about racism and institutional racism of what freeways actually did to America, segregating neighborhoods and creating injustice that we see that still exists today on the east side and the west side. I stand against this I-15 expansion 100%. It's an unsustainable model. We can't just keep expanding and expanding the freeway, and studies have shown that that expansion doesn't really even do anything to alleviate traffic. So we have to actually invest in public transportation, and just, I would fight against the I-15 expansion every tooth and nail. We just don't need it. And then also in terms of that too is I support the Rio Grande plan over here. It's a cool idea that actually came from the community to restore the Rio Grande and actually create what they call a train box, where they want to bury the trains underground, and it would free up about 50 to 70 acres, something like that, to be redeveloped and create and get rid of the imbalance of people waiting on trains on the west side that doesn't even exist on the east side, that is an injustice and imbalance there. And then the last point too is we need to look at what the west side is our most cultural, historic neighborhoods. We have Pacific Islanders here, Hispanic communities, Black communities. I would use historic landmark laws to create cultural, historic neighborhoods to block from gentrification on the west side.
Erin Mendenhall, 90 seconds.
I just want to reorient us that we're in the state of Utah. We are a blue dot in a supermajority Republican state. And my job, your mayor's job, is to get the best results we can in the context that we are in. And the opportunity to get something better than getting completely rolled over is something I'm always going to do. So when our mayor walked away from the inland port, yeah, I stepped up because we got rolled. And what we ended up with today is an inland port that is not in a legislative washing machine, but that is investing the tax increment from this city, which is the majority of their money, into this community and environmental protections. When it comes to I-15, I am vehemently opposed to the expansion of I-15 because the entire premise that we should continue to accommodate single occupant vehicles as the fastest growing state in the nation is a doomed conclusion. We need public transit, massive expansion. The second reason is air quality, more cars, more pollution on our already most impacted part of the city and often the state. And the third reason, but by far the most important, is that we can't continue to demolish homes on the west side of Salt Lake City for the convenience of drivers throughout this region getting here a couple minutes faster. How do we fight it? With you and bringing your voice up next to the cities. Together, we get something better on air quality, on making sure no homes are destroyed, and the reality that the state is going to do something, and we need it to be the best possible outcome that we can for this community.
All right, let's move on to economic opportunities. The question posed is, Westsiders often feel there's a split between East-West, and the West Side neighborhoods feeling physically, economically, and socially boxed in by an East Side-West Side axis. Do you feel this is an accurate statement, and what would your administration do to address it? You get 90 seconds to respond to this one, and we're going to start with Erin Mendenhall.
We have begun. We've begun with $3 million of reconnecting community funds, 1.9 of which we secured from the federal government, because the idea of a train box has been done in Denver, it's been done in Reno, and we want to explore it here. So we brought $1 million ourselves, we got $1 million from the feds, and right now there's actually a table from the Salt Lake City transportation team back there, and you can talk about how this is already happening, an exploration of 6 miles of disconnect. It goes back before I-15 was built. It's from the redlining that happened even into the 30s that said this is an area not to invest in because of the color of people's skin who live here. And I keep that map on my wall in my office in City Hall. And it's the kids in this community whose classrooms I go read in that motivate me to fight as hard as I can, not only for the money we deserve, which is our money back in the federal government, to get it back here, but to punch through these walls, these train tracks and the railroad tracks that have been built, boxing our west side in. We're doing it with the 9 line, reconnecting the ribs there, the 6 North, $1.5 million rebuild of 6 North, the 6 North and 10th North bus, the 2nd West, 9th South, and 21st South bus lines that we're paying UTA to run every 15 minutes or less so that our kids can get to school, so they can have job opportunities and internships after. It's the free transit passes that we're investing in. These are the real solutions that you deserve, and the West Side is going to get more.
Rocky Anderson, 90 seconds, please.
Thank you. Are any of you from North Point, from that area? We have a mayor who said, oh, well, the inland port was a bad deal, and then she and her administration got behind this insane idea to turn this agricultural, this beautiful part of our city into basically another warehouse district. That was a total slam on the west side. I don't know what the motivations were. I'm not going to speculate about that, but it was a dirty deal for the west side and for the North Point area. We have got to make sure in every area of the city that everybody feels included and that we have more that brings us together. When I was mayor, we put in the Pioneer Precinct. We made sure that crime was way down. You know what they do to make crime go down? Look at the report by the police, CompStat report for last year, end of the year, 2022. The way they get crime to go down is they turn a blind eye. They either don't show up, they show up too late, or they don't hold anybody accountable. And they showed, if you can believe this, a 58.9% reduction in drug crime in the Rio Grande area for last year. You know that's only because they turn a blind eye to it. We have got to do what we can to bring this entire community together and also have community building events like the Salt Lake City International Jazz Festival that I made free of charge for 7 years.
Michael Valentine, 90 seconds.
Yes, I absolutely think there's an east side, west side disconnect. You know, we talked about the freeway, we talked about the lack of resources. I talked to voters over here on the west side that are so frustrated. Some of them have even talked about annexing West Salt Lake to a new city, which I think is pretty amazing and is something that, is out of desperation and frustration. The disconnect is even shown in the city council. How many city council people do we have? We have 7. How many are on the west side? 2. I would like to see the city council actually expanded and see District 1 and 2 actually split. So we have four council seats on the west side, the downtown, District 4 in the middle, and 4 council seats on the east side. I think that would be a lot more representative of the city, and it goes to the basic tenet of representative government. Sorry. The other part about this too is just like basic resources and investment. I think is totally lacking. I've been going to these North Point meetings over here on North Temple for years, and this community was so frustrated. They spent thousands of dollars hiring private security to just police their neighborhoods. Like, we don't have basic resources there. They spent a long time fighting the city for even just trash cans, which is insane to me. We can't get basic resources. So it's about, I mentioned the train box, the Rio Grande plan, killing I-15, saving apartments and houses, and investing in the west side and on the council as well.
Time. All right, let's talk about some civic engagement here. As mayor, how would you solicit and use citizen input to explore and develop solutions to this and other challenges related to zoning, housing, development on the west side? 90 seconds to respond, and we're going to start with Rocky Anderson.
Thank you very much. I would do what we did when I was mayor before in terms of openness, transparency, and accessibility. We were noted by the Nation magazine as setting a new standard for cities in terms of transparency and access. I've got to say, this present administration is as inaccessible and untransparent as you can possibly get. We would hold, and as we did before, Saturday morning with the mayor, and I would bring the heads of every department out to hear from everybody, to hear your ideas, to find out about problems that may not have gotten communicated or solved. And it's amazing what you can get done when you have these rather informal gatherings, but where people can be actually heard. And one of the first meetings this happened, somebody came in and said, for 10 years, my front yard has been flooded every time it rains hard. I looked over Leroy Hooton, who was head of our public services, or public utilities, and I said, get on it, Leroy. Let me know in a week what we can do. A week later, this resident called and said, my gosh, I can't believe it. I've been doing this for 10 years, and it's resolved now because we were heard. We also had one-on-one meetings. This mayor, she condescends to have 6 meetings of 10 minutes apiece once a month with residents in the city. We will be open, we'll be transparent and accessible.
Michael Valentine, 90 seconds.
Yes, so I think this is really such a basic question of what the point of being an elected official is, and then why there is an oath of office. Officials are there to work for the public. They're not there to work for anyone else. They're there to serve. They actually are the boss of the city. You all are the boss. The public, the community is always the boss. And I think that gets really missed a lot of time in politics, especially right now in Salt Lake City. And it's one of the reasons why I don't take money from corporations and developers, and I support publicly funded campaigns, because when you take thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars in this situation, it creates a psychological effect of who are you actually there to serve? Who are you working for? I talked about the Pantages a lot. It's important to my personal story. But I tried to work with Erin. I tried to meet with her for 2 years. I was talking to the Eccles. I was talking to people around the whole country. I made an offer to buy the theater. In some alternate reality, I'm not up here running for office. I'd be working with the mayor. I'd be the director of a theater over there. But she wouldn't meet with me. She scheduled the meeting 2 years later. She gave the deal to the developers and then washed her hands from it. The whole meeting was in bad faith. I'm a resident here. I'm a voter. How can I not meet with my own mayor? It seems insane. So we really need to go back to the basic point of what representative democracy is and have elected officials and leaders that are actually there to work for the people in public service.
Erin Mendenhall, 90 seconds.
The answers aren't in City Hall. They're with you. They're in the community. And being a city council person for 6 years and going to 5 different community councils every month, I've been to all your community councils in the last 3 years. You know me. And I know that you know what your community needs. And that's why I'll use North Point as an example. The former mayor must be confused because it was the Biskupski administration who didn't answer your calls requesting a small area plan when development was starting to happen without a plan for the area. My administration picked that up when we started. And by the time the small area plan was finished with you all, the Great Salt Lake was in crisis. That's why I wrote the letter to the city council supporting that we not implement industrial zoning and that we protect the areas that are undeveloped. That's the kind of listening that City Hall should be responsive with. The other thing you've been saying for a long time is invest in the West Side. And we have $9 million coming to the Jordan River, the Glendale Regional Park, new bus routes, improved bus stops, housing just 2 blocks from here, Spark project with 200 affordable units, family-sized units, and daycare happening here on North Temple. In addition, Thriving in Place plan, 2,500 residents gave us input on that plan. Former Mayor Anderson has said he would have rushed it through and gotten it done a lot faster. You needed to help shape that plan, not City Hall. And that's the kind of open government you deserve and you haven't had enough of.
All right, let's get to the lightning round. These are questions, again, posed by the Westside Coalition and League of Women Voters. This is the lightning round, which means we just need you to raise your hand or state yes or no. Let's just have you state yes or no. You don't have to get up or anything like that, but this is some quick questions here. If you believe, tell me yes or no, if you believe the recently proposed modifications to the Planning Commission's recommendation related to the North Point Small Area Plan will be adequate enough to address the impact future growth may have on property owners and the environment. Just yes or no.
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 All right, next one. Your administration would provide financial assistance to the residents on 2200 West should the contractor installing sewer require residents to also pay to hook up to it. Yes or no? Your administration would provide financial assistance to the residents on 2200 West should the contractor installing sewer require residents to also pay to hook up to it.
No.
Possibly.
No.
Okay, last one. Will you work with the VA to establish more HUD-VASH rentals that veterans can get into?
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. And we did when I was mayor.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to homelessness. Question here, is our community, especially along North Temple and the Jordan River, is a hotspot for homeless and its attendant consequences? What is your proposed solution to the growing crisis of people experiencing homelessness in our city? As mayor, what steps would you propose taking immediately to address? 2 minutes for this answer, and we are going to begin with Michael Valentine.
Yes, so I'm the only one up here that I believe has been personally homeless. It's an issue that's very important to me. I also have a store at the Gateway that's down on Rio Grande from where the road home was destroyed. So I see homelessness every day. I see people come in my store and tell me about their situations and what's working for them and what's not. I think I mentioned earlier, it's the most important issue in the city. I released a housing homeless plan in February where basically it's just all pure action. I would declare a state of emergency. I'd actually ask, try to work with the governor to declare a state of emergency because people are dying. 160 people died last year. People are losing limbs, losing arms, losing toes, all sorts of things, frostbite, they're getting heat stroke in the summer. It's a humanitarian crisis. I don't know what other point of having an emergency declaration there is if it's not there to help people that are in need, that are in harm's way. From there, I would set up sanctioned camping for everybody, and my sanctioned camping does not necessarily mean camping. I mentioned this at the first debate. I hate this term camping. These people aren't camping, they're surviving. Camping is a recreational activity. The important point of sanctioned camping is to ban abatements that are unjust, that are spending public tax dollars, paying cops overtime to go around, hassle people, to destroy their belongings, and attack the community. From there, we would intake everybody and actually put people into long-term housing, such as Houston has done in the last 10 years. They've housed 25,000 people. My plan is actually very similar to what's going on in Denver right now. We're in talks with the mayor's office there, a guy named Mike Johnston. He instantly got into office, declared a state of emergency. He's vowed to house 1,000 people. Yesterday, they actually had what they called moving day, where they closed an encampment and moved people into long-term housing. And it's a solution we can do. The important thing to mention as well is the RDA, the Redevelopment Agency. There's lots of vacant land, vacant buildings, and we can build long-term housing, fight for rent control, inclusionary zoning, and make housing a human right.
Erin Mendenhall, 2 minutes, please.
Everyone deserves a safe place to sleep at night, and there are not enough beds in our system. Utah has experienced a surge in the last few years that's been seen across the country, and in our state, it is concentrated in our city. Homelessness is complex, but so is the city's strategy to address it. It starts with more housing of all types. Second, we're bringing services to our unsheltered neighbors since this administration started. Third, we're working to get the state, the county, and other cities to do their fair share in here. Fourth, we're working to support our housed residents and businesses who are impacted by the unsheltered living on our streets. Fifth, we're working on reforming the criminal activities of those who are unsheltered. We have funded 777 units with our state partners. 434 of them are open, 300 are still under construction. This is massive steps forward. Is it enough? No. The tiny home village, which will be breaking ground soon and opening those homes next calendar year, plus the 50 pods that we announced for our sanctioned camp with the state just 2 weeks ago. Are those enough? Not yet. 600 winter shelter beds, plus 200 code blue beds, 800 expanded winter shelter beds, and other cities are helping to host them. It's not Salt Lake City alone anymore. Is it enough? No, but if we are alone, it will never be. We have to have these partners with us. And finally, the state is investing more than we are in the creation of affordable housing. They're helping make these same permanent supportive units come online. And they're working with us to bring the county and other cities onto the same sheet of music, because we can't keep going as the center for the state's homelessness crisis, having cities and counties send their residents here because they are not doing enough to support them.
Rocky Anderson, 2 minutes.
Thank you. You can find our staged immediate steps within the next year, 2 years, and ongoing on our table back there. Please pick it up or check it out on our website, because it is exactly the opposite of what this administration has been doing so dismally. I can't believe we just heard our current mayor, after what we all saw last winter. Would all of those of you who worked with homeless people, or those of you who were out in the winter, raise your hands, please. You know what I'm talking about. Chuck's back here, all 10 toes, both of his feet amputated, because this mayor refused to provide even temporary shelter to get hundreds of people in from outside the cold. How hypocritical for her to say every person deserves a safe place to sleep at night, when she left hundreds of people out. She knew that they were dying, and then she issued, after 5 people had died, an empty emergency declaration that made zero difference, because nobody stepped it up other than the overflow shelter in Mill Creek. I would immediately, not this phony political pretense of 50 pods just riding on the state's coattails with their pilot project. It's time that we get out the encampments out of our city for everybody's benefit and create an adequate, sanctioned, people call them camps, and I'm sorry about that, Michael, but they can come up with their tents. And we provide showers, we provide decent bathrooms, which this mayor's refused to do for years, notwithstanding my demands in writing for several months when I was brushed off. And they deserve to have property lockers and a place that they can be secured, and most importantly, that they have case management workers who are going to help them transition out of homelessness. We can do this as a community. and other communities have done the same
Let's
thing.
move on to the environment as demonstrated by a recent EPA environmental justice assessment. West Salt Lake City faces significant concerns when it comes to air quality and livability concerns. What is your plan to keep the West Side equitably environment healthy for the people who live here? And we're going to give you 90 seconds to respond. We will start with Erin Mendenhall.
Thank you. The EPA baseline study happened because I wrote to the EPA, we reached out and asked them to create a baseline study that really confirmed what we already knew as locals, which is that the West Side has been continuously inequitably affected by environmental pollution of many sorts, including air pollution, which is why when I launched my campaign in 2019, I did it in front of the air quality monitors at SLC, because this is why I got into politics. This is the whole reason I decided to be on a stage like this, is because I'm sick of our air quality taking years off of our lives. And there is a lot we can do, and there's a lot that we have done. Changing the way we drive is still the single biggest lever, because our vehicles are still the #1 source of pollution. Also, electrifying all of those push trolleys and our airport, making that a LEED gold building, is a big part of West Side pollution elimination. 25,000 bus passes into every school district kid, public school district kid, parent and teacher, is a big deal. Not only right now for air quality opportunities, for their educational opportunities, because we're making transit riders into the future. Punching through this west-east divide with the bus lines and improving bus stops so it's easier for us. The Via Rideshare program that helps you get into a rideshare vehicle instead of having to drive your car. Lawnmower and snowblower exchange for the electric exchange, which we paid UDOT, or Utah DEQ to give West Siders advantage on that.
Rocky Anderson, 90 seconds, please.
Thank you. I always wonder about somebody who says I was an air quality advocate and they can't point to one bit of quantifiable data that shows that anything's better after all these years. When I was mayor, we believed in quantifiable data, and we reduced greenhouse gas emissions by 31% in our city operations, and then we went on the road. All over the world, we were asked to go to other municipalities to show them what we did. We won the World Environment Award in London for our environmental programs. It was the World Leadership Award, actually, in the environmental category. I won the EPA's Climate Protection Award, and the mayor keeps talking about trees on the west side. Planting trees, that's great in terms of climate and carbon dioxide. That has nothing to do with the particulate emissions that are shortening our lives on average by 2 years throughout this entire region, and that's impacting the west side more than anywhere else. We need to stand firm against expansion of the I-15, which is just going to create more sprawl, more traffic, in the end, more demands for more highways and more lanes. We've got to commit to ending sprawl to the extent we can, and making certain that we have the transit that everyone needs. We should sue the polluters. If we've been suffering, our health has been suffering, we ought to sue, and I will bring in a first-rate environmental lawyer to go after those polluters finally. It needs to be done.
Michael Valentine, 90 seconds.
Yeah, I find it interesting that the current mayor talks about being an air advocate. I'm not sure if she understands that historic preservation is actually the greenest form of construction, and overseeing the greatest boom that we've seen in city history with all these departments going up, blocking roads. It seems like there could be a lot better construction that's not wasting water and is more environmentally friendly. I think, on the west side, I think the inland port, which is also known as the polluting port, is what they call it, has been an absolute disaster. We talk about the discrepancy between east and west side. I don't think the inland port would have ever been built on the east side. It's a disgrace, and it needs to be, fought against, and I think it needs to be moved. polluting the environment, polluting the area here. I also want to mention the Great Salt Lake. I support Sierra, Utah's recent lawsuit against the state of Utah for inaction on the Great Salt Lake of saving the lake. I would like to see the EPA step in and declare this environmental disaster and get federal funds to actually save the lake. You know, so many people live along the Wasatch Front. If we lose this lake, you know, scientists talk about parts of Utah being completely unlivable, which is almost, you know, mind-boggling, insane. The other part real quick too is environmental stuff can also be talked about with food and nutrition. You know, there's food deserts all along the west side, not having enough grocery stores, fruit, places to plant, and, you know, keep people nutritious and healthy.
Thank you. Continuing on environment, as UDOT moves forward with its plan to widen I-15 from Farmington to Salt Lake City, Westside residents and local business owners have expressed concern over noise pollution, air quality, economic concerns, in addition to the loss of homes. As mayor, what action would you undertake to ensure that these concerns are addressed? We're going to give you 90 seconds to respond and start with Rocky Anderson.
As we did regarding the Legacy Highway, we would look at every possible legal remedy. That we know that in the long term, it's going to create even more pollution, more traffic. It's just the cycle that we always see when people are building more highways to accommodate more, and in the case of Davis County, 1 person per car traffic in and out of our city, making all of us sick and threatening all of our health. I think that in all of these areas, we need to look far ahead into the future. And you don't need to look that far ahead in terms of the Great Salt Lake. We absolutely need to understand we've got 5 years. The scientists are very clear on that. This could be a wasteland. Your property values could plummet. Businesses are going to be moving out of this area. The same thing is going to happen very slowly if we continue to have more pollution and continue to rely on the automobile traffic and the highways rather than building more transit, as every other community around the world is learning. So I think we all need to stand together. It's not a political, it shouldn't have to do with partisanship. It has to do with the public health and the future of all of our communities. And it's the West Side that has been getting hammered the worst. And that's why I just do not understand this administration pushing for more warehouses and the destruction of these rural areas in North Point.
Michael Valentine, 90 seconds.
Yeah, so I think there's a big difference between being an elected official and being a leader. I think a leader does the hard things. I'm not here to work for myself. I'm here to serve the public. I think it's very clear that everybody is against this I-15 expansion. I haven't seen anybody excited about it on a community level. And similar to what this going on in the state recently with this gondola in the Cottonwood Canyon, where they just railroaded that thing through and the whole community, everyone was against it, I think is really obscene, and it goes to a breach of democracy of what the public is here for. The community's voices always matter, and someone needs to champion them and fight for all of you to do what you want to see done. That's the only thing I'm up here to do, is be a megaphone for the community. So I would block the I-15 expansion at every level. I would try to work with the state. I would try to work with the governor and the legislature as much as we can. But if they're not, willing to negotiate and willing to stop expanding a freeway that is not even going to have any real impact on ridership and reducing drivers, I want to see them push for public transportation. So really, having someone up there to serve, to fight the good fight. I get very tired of when people in the city level, where they're like, oh, the state won't let us do that. I guess, shucks. Well, I think that's a joke. I think we need to push back. And as Salt Lake City grows, we need to be like every other big city, Boston, New York, Seattle, where we have independence and we take back control, where the state oversteps its bounds and we have municipal power.
Erin Mendenhall, 90 seconds, please.
We're sitting on the west side. I don't need to tell you, because you live in the community where the state has made some really bad decisions. They've cited a prison in our community, right by an airport, right on the heels of the Great Salt Lake in a mosquito land. They did an inland port, and we walked away. and it was not good. It was not good. And it's a little embarrassing to have somebody stand up here and tell the West Side that you could have stopped it. You fought. We fought. And the option of walking away or suing the state continuously does not keep us at the table to get 40% of the tax increment coming into this community and 40% more of the tax increment going to environmental protections or mitigation for what's already happening here. You don't get that when you just keep suing and walking away. The I-15 expansion has been funded. How it happens is what we get to decide by working with the reality that we live in. No home should be destroyed. Public transit should be expanded. Parks, pickleball under the parkways, what the community wants is what we should be fighting for. Not throwing bombs at the legislature, because what you know better than any part of the city, when a mayor throws bombs at the legislature, it's the city that gets burned. It's Salt Lakers who suffer, and I'm never gonna put you in that spot so I can get a headline in the newspaper.
Let's talk about policing public. I would again ask the audience, please withhold your applause until the end. Let's talk about policing public safety and social justice. The Commission on Racial Equity in Policing was formed in 2021 to examine Salt Lake City Police Department's policies, culture, and budget, and any city policies that influence the PD's culture or policies. How would you assess the progress made to date in this area, and what more needs to be done to enhance policing practices and ensure that that problems are addressed? 90 seconds. We're going to start with Michael Valentine, please.
Yeah, so before I was working on the theater and the Pantages, I'm a community organizer and activist. I spent a lot of time fighting against police brutality and injustice going on in our community. We fought for a long time through Utah Against Police Brutality, a lot of the community groups. I actually helped start a group called, sorry, I just blanking on the name. I just can't remember my own group. But anyway, I support a Chicago plan called the SLC PAC, where basically we set up a civilian review board that polices the police, where we hold police accountable, we investigate them, and really bring community justice back to policing. I would ask for the resignation of Mike Brown. I think he hasn't been doing a good job. I think a lot of policing has gotten worse and worse, and I like the Black Lives Matter police mural, but I don't think that's enough. I think anyone getting shot by the cops is a huge, grave injustice, and I think it's a very important issue that we need to directly address. And we need to, fight against qualified immunity. Police have to be held accountable. They're not there to be assassins on the streets and shooting people in the back and not investigating themselves and finding things, nothing's wrong. So it's such a big problem. I would fight against the police unions. I would bring the community there to actually police the police and bring SLC PAC.
Erin Mendenhall, 90 seconds, please.
Thank you. I created the Commission on Racial Equity in Policing with our City Council, and we did so to bring more diverse voices to examine the City Council, or rather the Police Department's policy, culture, and budget. We also at the same time expanded the ability for residents to participate in any of our boards and commissions by finally giving a stipend to our residents who are volunteering to be a part of, whether it's the peanut board or the utility board or the planning commission or the Commission on Racial Equity and Policing. We want more faces to be able to show up, and not everyone can afford to do that. I am so proud of what the Commission on Racial Equity and Policing has done. They've brought us the civilian responder proposal, which the City Council funded. We have a dozen civilians out there as part of the police department, because we don't always need to send a police officer out when there's a non-criminal call. We don't always need a police officer directing traffic after the University of Utah game gets out when they could be responding to calls in progress. We doubled the number of social workers who co-respond with our police department, and we added social workers to Salt Lake City Fire Department. They've been out over a year now, and they're making a tremendous impact. We got a recommendation from the commission to do community-based education for our police officers on the front line to learn from our diverse communities about their history of experience and their cultural relationship to policing. This is happening. We've expanded opportunities for more diverse community members to join our police department. The Commission on Racial Equity and Policing must keep going, and it will with me.
Thank you. Rocky Anderson, 90 seconds, please.
You hear about all these reports and meetings and the process and everything. Let's look at the reality in the Salt Lake City Police Department. A black man, Ryan Outlaw, is on the floor of an elevator at the Covey Apartments. The police arrived there, I think it was about 29 minutes after the call was made. They go in, they stand there and do nothing. He is bleeding out. He ended up dying 2 hours later. He was bleeding to death. They stood there talking to him. Who did this to you? The girlfriend, who turned out to be the stabber, but they didn't know that. She's asking, are you going to do anything? And the officer on the body cam says, what do you want us to do? We're not paramedics. Medical's on the way. They stood there for over 8 minutes while this man was bleeding to death, black man, and they never did a thing to help him. He died 2 hours later. That is racism. That is incompetence. And you know what our mayor said when she was asked about that? She was asked by the reporter, wouldn't you like our police to exercise the first aid training they get, and it's renewed every year, to help people who are in need? Isn't that what first responders are about? And she said, sounding like the chief in the school district in Uvalde, she said, no, I would prefer that they keep themselves safe, meaning the police officers, because that's their job. Now, what about
time?
Okay, I've got more instances, but we
Time.
have a real problem.
We are wrapping up here. I do want to move on to this question from the Westside Coalition and the League of Women Voters about parks, trails, and open space. What more could be done to ensure Westside green spaces are safe and inviting for all members of the community instead of contentious locations due to unaddressed homelessness? 90 seconds to respond, and we're going to begin with Erin Mendenhall.
We need a place for people to go, and we've talked a lot about that tonight. We're going to keep talking about that. 600 winter shelter beds, the 50 shelter pods that we're going to be opening with the county, the tiny home village. These help. It's not enough yet, but these help, and these are the right steps that we should be going on. Parks are not the right place for anybody to live, and that's why we have to have the partners beyond our city boundaries to make sure that, I think it's awesome that Sandy is hosting transitional housing for people of the medically vulnerable population. That is awesome that we have West Valley City stepping up to host almost 200 winter shelter beds. This is not Salt Lake City's issue alone. People experience losing their housing all over the state of Utah, and this is the kind of approach that we should have. But when it comes back to our parks, a few key things that my administration's done. We built the Park Ranger program. You've seen them along Jordan River Parkway, in Jordan Park itself, and in other parts of the city. We've actually grown that, and I hope to keep growing the Park Ranger program. We funded park cleanup and maintenance with our sales tax that's been growing. We asked the community and the city council appropriated a portion of our Funding Our Future funds for park maintenance. That was newly done, and you're going to see more improvements in taking care of those spaces. And then the big parks bond that Salt Lakers across the city supported with Jordan Park, Jordan River improvements, and council district parks in both 1 and 2 are going to be improved because Salt Lakers across the city invested.
Rocky Anderson, 90 seconds, please.
We have had terrible stewardship of our green spaces all across the city. They're allowing now, they didn't do anything to save, like up by Liberty Wells, more than 2 acres, or up in the upper avenues, this horrendous development by Ivory that the city's gone to bat on. But what about on the west side? I was with the mayor. We came down for the naming of the Archie Archuleta Bridge. We were walking side by side, then she's talking to somebody else. I look over the side, and along the Jordan Trail, as far as you could see, there was encampment garbage, as far as you could see in both directions. That's totally shameful. And I think what they did was ran everybody off like she does for a mayor's right to work day. They get rid of all the unsheltered people that are there so they're not going to be seen. like during the All-Star game that we hosted here. But what we need better stewardship in Cottonwood Park. That's not a place for all these encampments. If you want to get rid of encampments, the 50 pods aren't going to make the difference. She has guaranteed by making that her initiative along with the state, saying that's going to do it, she has guaranteed that we're going to have continued encampments throughout the city, in our parks, under the overpasses, in our neighborhoods, and she's going to continue with these horrendous police raids and confiscations of homeless people's property.
Michael Valentine, 90 seconds, please.
Yeah, so I have a little bit different of an answer. Homeless people have a constitutional right to exist in public spaces. If they have nowhere else to go, parks are a safe refuge for them. And a place that they can be. When I was homeless, I remember driving around for hours and hours, exhausted, just trying to find somewhere I could put my head down to sleep for a few minutes. And I went to Sugar House Park, I went to Liberty Park, I slept under a tree, and it really saved me, you know. So it's important that parks exist for that space, but more importantly, you know, they also need to be used for everyone else. And that's literally the reason why in my homeless plan, the first step is declare a state of emergency and set up sanctioned camping for everybody. You know, Rocky mentioned the term camping. I have a different take on it. You know, people think it means outside. That's why I talk about the RDA buildings and having sanctioned camping places inside. That doesn't necessarily have to be outside. So it's important that like we do that because it's an instant win-win-win for everybody. It's a win for the businesses, it's a win for the parks that get cleaned up right away. Everyone gets moved into these sanctioned areas. There's compassion. We unite all the city resources to help people and move beyond that. But you know, the environment and like our green spaces, it's very close to historic preservation. It's what makes Salt Lake City unique and a world-class destination for people all over the place. We need to protect our green areas. We need to invest in them more and make sure they're maintained and available for everyone as a common good.
Thank you all. We're going a little bit over time, but I want to get to some questions that were submitted by people here in the audience. So we're going to quickly do this, and I'm going to give you a minute to answer these just so we can make up a little bit of time and let these people get on with their evenings as well. The first question from an audience member is, will the city enforce its own ordinances? I've lived on the west side since 1986, and the neighborhood is in deterioration. Even if you care about violations, the city does very little, often nothing about it. I want to give you a chance to address this question. We're going to begin with Rocky Anderson. 1 minute, please.
Yes, absolutely. But as Michael noted, it is unconstitutional to run people off the way the Mendenhall administration's been doing and to confiscate the property of homeless people. And unbelievably, they were taking people's survival gear during the middle of last winter. It was the most inhumane you've ever seen in our own city. So sorry, I lost
30 seconds?
Yeah, okay.
Enforcing ordinances.
We will enforce the ordinances, we'll enforce our drug laws, but not for the purpose of jailing and imprisoning people, but to get them into drug treatment in a restorative justice mode that we incorporated. We had the most comprehensive restorative justice program in the country when I was mayor. We will take back the duties of the city attorney from the DA's office. We will enforce the laws, but always with an aim to solving problems, not punishing and focusing on retribution.
Thank you. Erin Mendenhall, 1 minute, please.
It's a broad question that doesn't get specific about which ordinances. We have everything from keeping your lawn below 6 inches to repairing broken windows in houses to participating in sidewalk repairs. So I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that we're not going to enforce, because we do, but I'm also not going to tell you that we're going to be hardcore law and order, everybody gets treated the same. We work with the community. We have a community action team. My liaisons, you know, if you go to city council meetings, and we come out and meet in the community to hear what your trouble is, what your needs are, and help us affect better policy. Sometimes somebody's down on their luck. Sometimes there's an elderly person who needs more assistance. And our SLC Corps, which is the volunteer team that we built in my office since I became the mayor, that's one of the ways that we try to show up and help out. We've done it recently in the ballpark neighborhood, for example, cleaning up some of the alleyways there. So we got to work as human beings together.
Thank you. Michael Valentine, 1 minute, please.
Yeah, I love this question because I have some personal experience with it. You know, back to the Pantages, that whole deal was illegal. The city violated state law, historic law against that. It violated its own ordinance for that. It wasn't followed. So do I think the city should follow its own laws? Yes, I do. That's the whole point. That's how we keep things accountable. That's how everything works. I think it's important to also mention that there's a big difference between legality and ethics. Not every law is ethical. You know, it used to be illegal for women to vote. It used to be illegal for interracial marriage. So I think it's important we look at what ordinance is being enforced and why and how it impacts the community. But yes, I think to follow the laws, that's why they're there. If the law is not working, we need to change it. But that's how we stay accountable, and that's basically the code of what's going on here, of how we create a representational government and how we serve the community. We have to stay accountable. We have to follow the city's own laws. Yeah.
All right, one more 1 minute response, please, to this audience question submitted tonight from someone here. Salt Lake City wants to continue to host special events, traffic to and from U of U games, the state fair, these baseball games affect the experience. How will your administration improve traffic around special events on Salt Lake City streets? We're going to start with Michael Valentine. 1 minute, please.
Yeah, so public transportation is a huge issue for me. My older brother lives in San Francisco, and I love going there because the public transportation system is so amazing. You can literally almost drop anybody in the city in San Francisco, and they can connect from the trolley to the bus to the BART, and really just get anywhere they need to. So I think it's important we expand public transportation. You know, I live downtown. I've been downtown for a long time. I'm sorry, I don't know if that mic just went off. But I've been downtown for a long time. We can't keep growing downtown. We need to invest more public transportation. We can't have everybody driving their car to the events. Everyone knows who lives around here that it gets crazy whenever there's a big event over here at the Fair Park, and people can't access that. So it's very important we expand public transportation and make sure everyone can get to places they need to go, and it's just easier for people. And one last point about that too, I also have in my platform, I'd love to do a disability master plan. I'm very concerned about how disabled folks are getting through the city, moving on sidewalks with cracked streets, getting on tracks, riding buses. So I'd love to work with the community and expand that with a disability master
Erin
plan.
Mendenhall, 1 minute, please.
Sure. We developed a transit master plan, of which we've implemented the first phase. There's 2 more phases, and we've just started to the second phase. And if you want to check that out, you can see how transit is going to grow in this city. And the way it's going to grow is because of the growth that's happening here is producing more sales tax money that we can afford to invest in public transit expansion. We've seen some of our willingness to invest with the bus passes for students, the bus stop improvements. The other place is that we had a 25-year-old transportation master plan, and we just finished updating that. So I don't have to hypothesize to you about what we would do or how bad it is. We are doing it. It is happening. We're going hard after the Inflation Reduction Act dollars, the billions and billions of dollars that was a bipartisan effort that passed just a year ago. We deserve those money to come back here to us, and $1.9 million to reconnect communities is some of the money that we're getting to make it happen.
Thank you. Rocky Anderson, 1 minute, please.
Yes, mass transit is the answer, and it ought to be free for all these major events. We ought to do everything that we can to make it convenient for everyone. We also need to improve the bicycling opportunities, and Michael mentioned ADA. I know people who are in wheelchairs. They keep sending me their photos. We send them on to the city. It's like some of our sidewalks are absolutely impassable for people who are in wheelchairs. We need to look out for everybody's interest. But in terms of moving masses of people to these events, it can't be by one person per automobile anymore. There have got to be incentives for people to carpool, and we've also got to provide adequate parking. What this minute she says, oh, we've done it, we've got these plans. They're going to take more than 100 parking places off of 2nd South. We put it in bike lane.
Time,
my time's up, sorry.
Thank you. If your question did not get asked, stick around afterward, talk to the candidates individually. I would encourage you. We're going to move to closing statements, and I also just want to say one of our congressional candidates has also arrived, and I want to give her 2 minutes to address you as well. But we're going to go to closing statements right now, and we are going to begin with Erin Mendenhall. 1 minute response on a closing statement, please.
Thank you for coming out tonight. Thank you for caring. The West Side always shows up. You're amazing. And I'm never going to stand up here and tell you what I think you want to hear because that's what I think you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what's real and what we can actually achieve and what we have actually achieved. We've heard a lot of complaining up here tonight. We've heard very little in the way of actual solutions. We've heard even less in the way of solutions that you could actually do in the state of Utah, from rent control to the way the Pantages operated, to suing the state to achieve a better outcome. These are not things that actually can happen in the state of Utah. Real results, that's what we're delivering on. 4,000 more housing units that are affordable, more than 770 for those who are experiencing homelessness today, and most of all, the state showing up as a partner. Can you imagine what we get done without a target on our back? We're getting it done. It's happening, and I don't want to go back to being the butt of the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Rocky Anderson, 1 minute, please.
Yes, she just mentioned again, she says over 777 or 70. Her literature says 777 units of supportive permanent housing for the homeless that she has achieved. That is absolutely dishonest. It hasn't happened. She made promises to all of us about some of these projects that we're pouring money into. None of it has come to fruition, and as a result, we have more and more unsheltered people in our community, more and more encampments preventing people from using our public places. We've got families that can't send their kids down to the local park. Nothing is getting better in that regard. The affordability in this community has gotten far worse because she keeps pumping millions of dollars to these profit-driven developers instead of the city doing what's absolutely been proven and what the voters in Seattle recognize, and that is we can get out of the market and stop leaving people so insecure with these market rate rental increases that leave everybody so insecure.
Michael Valentine, 1 minute.
Yeah, so I think it says a lot about a mayor up here who says this is impossible, that's impossible, holding themselves to limited beliefs. I don't think anything's impossible. I think if we work together and we unite, we can solve every issue across the board. We're not up here complaining. I released a homeless plan in February of this year that outlines everything that needs to happen for homelessness and housing. Literally the exact plan that the mayor of Denver is doing right now next door. You know, I've released an entire platform that looks at every issue on a structural, systemic level of what these root causes of these issues are. You know, I'm obviously a very different candidate than these guys. I represent a new generation, a new voice, new perspective, fresh ideas. I like what you said, Erin. It's time to go through the future, you know, and leaving the failed politics of the past is the exact way to do that, uniting everybody, moving across boundaries and solving issues at a root cause and root level. And I thank you for having me up here tonight.
Thank you to all of you. Now go ahead and applaud. Thank you to our candidates. Thank you all. And again, if your questions did not get answered, the candidates will be around. As they are stepping off the stage, I do want to invite 2nd Congressional District candidate Kathleen Reeby to speak to you for 2 minutes. Just like we did with the other candidates. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you everybody for staying here for just 2 more minutes. You stayed for so long, 2 more minutes isn't gonna kill you. My name is Kathleen Reeby, and we had a little communication error when we found out the time when I was supposed to be here, so I apologize. I am a school teacher in Granite School District. I started my career in Magna, and I worked in Olean Walker. I have been 22 years as a public school teacher, and some of these frustrations that you've heard tonight really caused me to run for office. I ran to be on the state school board, advocating for our students and our teachers to make better policies for all the students across the state. After that, I ran for the state senate, and I flipped that seat. I flipped the school board seat, and I flipped the Senate seat, and this is going to be my hat trick. I'm going to flip this seat too. I'm the Democratic candidate that's running in this area, and I'm here. I showed up because I know how many people are represented in CD2, and it's important that I represent the district and your voices. I have been a strong advocate for clean air, and I've been a strong advocate for the Great Salt Lake. I understand that the Great Salt Lake is an organism that needs protection. I tried to run a bill to protect the shoreline so that we'd have actually multiple layers of protection. And I have also worked really hard to make sure that I'm listening to your voices. I serve in the Capitol, and I work on the minority party to really work hard to make sure that we push back every chance we get. When there's a bill that comes out, we try to change some words to carve out the things that you guys need. So it's been a tough battle, but I'm glad to be up there. I'm the minority whip, and I've been up there for 5 years. So thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for all the candidates that have come out. It's hard to run, so I appreciate them being here. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this together. Thank you.
Just if I could just say one quick thing as you're leaving. I'm Shauna Bona. I'm the president of the League of Women Voters of Salt Lake. And on behalf of the League and our wonderful partners, the Westside Coalition, I just want to thank all of you for coming. Thank the candidates for preparing and participating. I want to remind you all that the candidates said they would stay until 8:30, so please mingle around and get your questions answered. And finally, please go to vote411.org. VOTE411.org. You can find out if you're registered to vote. You can find out where drop boxes are. And you can also, as of October 31st, you can see a voter's guide with candidate answers to questions that come from the community. So register to vote. Watch for your ballots, which will start coming on October 31. Get them in the mail by November 20th. And make your voices heard on November 21. Thank you.